Hey everyone, Steve here at the homestead. I had found this relatively flat spot here uphill, and we're going to put 4 IBC totes and feed those from down below with a ram pump. So I've got a kit from Land to House. He's kind of the expert online on YouTube for ram pumps. So we'll try out his kit. Basically that's downslope from the spring, which is just over there down the hill. But it's got 2 or 3 meters of head pressure that feeds the drive pipe into the ram pump. The ram pump then will very inefficiently but progressively push water up into these 4 IBC totes. That'll store the water in the warm months, and then that'll feed down an 1.5-inch line, kind of following the curve of the existing water. So right now there's a nice seasonal creek that's rolling through the property. And right now I say mid-March, it's crazy. Like there's no snow. We're actually making really good progress on the greenhouse and getting the garden going. My priority project right now is this irrigation system. So we're gonna kind of passively push that water uphill to the storage, feed it back down using the additional head pressure of this higher part of the land. We're basically on the back side of the property. That'll feed down, and then we'll build a network of feeder lines for the various raised beds in the garden. So that's kind of exciting. But right now, taking this clearing here for a 2x2 grid of totes. I don't want to just put it on the soft ground. So I'm probably going to use some of the newer fall here to basically put a nice grid for those to set on so that there's something solid for it to stay on when the ground gets a bit more soggy in the rainier months. All right. So this is what I have so far for a foundation for 4 IBC totes. Now, I'll show you the foundation in detail in a sec here. If you look into the distance, the orange there, that's the spring. That's snow fencing around the spring. And I think we're about 12 meters above that. The line will run to a supply tank right there. That's basically the buffer for the pressure. So that can be from the spring to the supply tank, which will be an old rain barrel, food grade blue rain barrel. That'll be, I'm going to try that with a poly line with a T that points up basically to fill a siphon. That siphon will then load from the spring to the rain barrel, and then from the supply tank down to right there. So the overflow from the spring basically flows down here, and then it cuts right, goes through the trees, and then hooks over to the garden over there. And so you can have the spring, supply tank, poly in there, supply tank to a ram pump down here. Now that's going to be solid PVC because that's the drive pipe, and the drive pipe needs to be solid because of the back pressure coming from the ram pump. The ram pump is basically right at the hook of the creek, which doesn't overflow in the summer. Right now in the spring and in the fall or rainy season, it does, and you can hear it trickling down there. So then from that ram pump, it's going to come up the hill here to this foundation. Well, actually to 4 IBC totes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each holds 1,000 liters. So up here will be hopefully 4,000 liters or near that. I'm going to put them with the spouts on the inside so that these 2 will face in and those 2 will face in, and then I'll connect them. So there's actually 2 models. There's a Schweitz and a Tauser, I believe, the 2 brands. So they have different connectors, and so I've found adapters for each of those. One is a cap lock and the other is a coarse thread. Those will come in here to a 2-inch, I think, maybe a 1.5-inch PVC. So it'll tee on this one, connect here, and then it'll have a 4-point junction there, and then it'll go down here just past the foundation. I'll probably put a removable connector and a ball valve there so that we can turn it on and off there, and if we need to repair anything or disconnect the totes for whatever reason, we're not breaking the system. From there, that's going to flow all the way down and follow that creek down the hill around the corner to the garden, and then we'll have drip lines there. So permaculture principle is use what you have. We are uphill and don't especially want to be bringing things like cinder blocks up here, which is what I've done for the 2 totes that are under the awning by the loft, by the barn, that are collecting rainwater. Those, of course, would last longer, but would be expensive and hard to haul. And we have a lot of relatively new blowdown. Not a lot, but there's still some. And so I chopped those up here. These are about 10-foot lengths. Took a little bit of dragging to get them here. They're pretty heavy. I did fall one that would have potentially fallen onto the totes. It's just some dead wood. So I tipped that over. It wasn't really solid enough to use as a foundation, so it's just here as a trail marker. These ones, though, are really good wood. They'll last some time. They aren't cedar. Cedar would last longer, of course, but not cutting down those fellas. These beauties are struggling with the warm weather and are pretty magical and would, of course, just be too big and wasteful. So I'm going to use this wood, knowing that it will eventually rot and it will need some repair, but I've got it cross-braced in a few spots so that hopefully that can be done in patches. And of course the totes are seasonal too, so that we will empty them out every fall. And at that point, they're easy enough to move off of the foundation to replace with other logs or eventually maybe with cinder blocks. We'll probably put a few more cross braces on here. It is pretty solid and is a nice strategic location. So even though we are on a hill, this part is pretty flat. Nicely though, it does have a few degrees of slope, and I've put the larger logs on the outside so that when the totes are on here, they'll have a slight incline or decline, I guess, towards the middle channel. So they'll naturally kind of drain out towards that. But then also they're a little bit sloped this way too. So we have the ones nearest to me here will be a bit higher than the ones there, which will help. We'll put the intake line from the ram pump on one of the upper tanks here. The overflow will be then coming off the front. And then we can channel that back down either to the spring, back to the supply tank, or maybe here we'll feed some of these thirsty cedars. We'll see. So that's the plan so far. A little bit improvisational, and we'll see how it works. Of course, bringing the totes up here will be one of the next big steps. And then connecting the lines, I still have to do the ram pump. It is a May long weekend. It is a beautiful day. And I'm here in the back by the spring. I've gradually been building out the irrigation systems. It's pretty extensive. It goes spring down to a standpipe to a ram pump up to 4 totes, down to some different spigot outlets, and then a junction to the barn loft, to the greenhouse, and then to a drip system within the garden. So probably at about 85% of the way there, working on that junction and some of the drip lines. But recently I've been putting in the system around the ram pump. I'll show you that in a moment. But basically what I'm doing right now is I've got a little watering bucket. And then here, you can see there's a little bit of an inlet, a standpipe here off of a line that comes from the spring. So basically there's a check valve submerged in the spring. That goes to a poly pipe here, to the standpipe, which I'm filling up. So then basically priming the pump. And then this line runs all the way down. Can't see it here because of the bushes. It goes all the way down, and then there's another junction. And this was kind of an improvisation along the way, because I was initially going to do a supply tank here. This is about 100 meters, and it's too long of a drive pipe for the ram pump, which is a 3/4 ram pump. The elevation is about 3 to 4 meters over that 100 meters, which is great. That'll help us get up that hill, which is where the totes are. But the elevation is more here where I'm standing, and then it's more gradual as it gets closer to the ram pump. And so the problem was that by siphoning from the spring, because we don't want it just wasting water, we want to have like an equilibrium there with the supply tank. Initially I was going to put a stock tank here, as a supply tank is the kind of interim point that the poly feeds into from the spring. And then there would be PVC as the drive pipe that leads into the ram pump. But that drive pipe, the PVC part, was looking way too long. And based on videos from Seth to Land to House, Ray was experimenting with this. It looked like that was going to be a fail. So I pivoted there. And now I've got this siphon here that comes over the ledge of the spring. into this poly pipe. I prime it here with this standpipe, which is short. It's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet. Poly runs down the hill here, and then there's a junction. The junction basically tees off. The poly continues on to the main trunk line, which delivers into the garden. So if we just wanted to go straight from the siphon of the spring to that system, we could, and skip the ram pump and the gravity. But that'll mostly be closed. And then the tee then splits off. One of them connects to another tee that goes to PVC, to the ram pump. And that's about, I guess, about 25, 28 meters or so. But then from that same tee, it shoots up to that tree. You can kind of see the ladder in the background there. And so basically, I've taken more 1-inch poly, run it up the tree. That's a makeshift supply tank. It's a standpipe, so that basically the water will siphon out from here, go down here. It will first fill up on par, more or less, with the level of the spring, and act as extra gravity that pushes into the drive pipe into the ram pump. So right now, I'm filling up this, basically priming the pump by filling all of the lines, including that standpipe that's running up the tree down there. And then I'll close this off airtight and open the valve at the base of the drive pipe that leads into the ram pump. And we'll test it out. You've seen a lot of videos online probably of these ram pumps where they click, 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 and that'll be pushing to a delivery pipe, which will be going up that hill to 4 totes, so 4,000 liters uphill. But I haven't connected it at the ram pump, so today we'll be testing to see if it's actually pumping, or if something else in this line here around the drive into the pump, if that needs to be fixed. So that's today's challenge. It'll take me a little while to fill this up, and then we'll see. We'll go test out the pump. All right, so I've primed it. Water is right up to the top. I'm going to seal this now. So again, the physics at work here is that we're siphoning from this spring, which is a great collector. So right there, submerged, is a check valve, which I still need to screen. That's underwater. It comes up over a ledge here, maybe about 5 meters away. It comes to this short standpipe, which I've been filling up with this. It's just because we're out in the backwoods, there's no garden hoses. This line then meanders down here. This is when it's really rainy or runoff in the spring. This, where I'm walking, is very wet, and it's a little bit wet right now. There's still a little bit of runoff from that spring. And you can see I'm following this poly line 1 inch down to here. All right, so this is coming from uphill from the spring, comes in here. This line, the poly line, goes and feeds the main trunk line, which is up there. I'll show you in a moment. Comes over here, tees. Now this is the drive pipe. So it's PVC, like I said, about 25 meters or so. And then this line basically follows up the length of this tree, which has a nice convenient groove for a pipe there, and is almost, well, definitely taller. The outlet is much higher than the surface of the spring, which is up there. And it sounds like, yeah, this line is full. Yeah, so it's done its job. It's holding up here. Actually, I am curious to see how far it goes. So let me check that out. Yeah, so I was up on the ladder and I was tapping it. Basically, the water level is right around where you see the red cap on the ladder. So right around there. Tough perspective to see, but if that makes sense, that's about the height of the spring. So then if we follow the PVC, then it comes here. So this is the ram pump. Now this isn't my designs, that's just the cement primer for the PVC. And basically the drive pipe comes in here. It's got a ball valve. The coupling this is the main check valve that should be going once I turn that on. This is the pressure tank, and then this is the valve that controls to the delivery pipe, which is this. I've not connected it yet, but it goes up there to where the 4 totes are. And then this 1.5 inch line that you see coming down, that will basically be feeding the garden passively with gravity. So if this works, hopefully we'll have a bit of a perpetual water machine. All right, so I'm going to try this. So this is depending on 2 things working: the siphon, basically refilling the pipe and keeping the air out, and then this pump working. I think everything's ready, so let's give this a shot. Come on. Come on, come on. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh. It's just flowing through now. Pump, pump, pump. I can't remember if you need the delivery pipe open or not. Come on. Okay, something's not going on right. It's just flowing through. Okay, what's going on here? All right, this is gonna need some troubleshooting, I guess. I always wanted to go fine on the first try, but it's not catching here. Not enough. I guess this is not enough pressure coming off the drive pipe. All right, to be continued, I guess. Okay, so it is pumping. I think maybe it's catching air off of this rather than it going up. Maybe because I don't have this connected. Yeah. I probably need to connect this and see uphill if it's actually filling. Okay. Okay, so we got it going. Got the delivery pipe now connected and open, and it's still going. This is good. So now I'm going to follow this delivery line all the way uphill here. See if it's actually pumping it up all this height. Okay. Yeah, this is the steep route I'm taking right now. By the way, I've anchored the line here to keep it from sliding downhill over time. So that's anchored on. And this delivery line comes up here to the system and up for a tree. Moment of truth. Is the water coming up here? Ugh. Oh, I hear it down there. It is still pumping, so just haven't got up this high yet. Nope, not there yet. So this is going to be a slow thing. So we'll wait and see. All right, so right there, let's see, right there, there's a pallet with a 3/4 inch ram pump, and it is slowly pushing water uphill into this line here. You can feel it. I've been tracing it as it gradually makes its way up the line, and hopefully soon we'll have some water coming out of this end. Yeah, this is definitely filling up. So while we're waiting, I'll show you this. We've got 4 IBC totes. We built a platform here to mostly level them off, although they do slope a little bit. This was just with what was around here, so logs and then pallets. These are all covered. And then we've connected this with PVC and then reinforced it for the weight that might be on these eventually once they're connected. So all 4 of these together will be 4,000 liters, and that'll flow past this valve, down the hill, past the ram pump, over down to the garden. And that'll be a passive gravity-fed water system. Still waiting for the water to get up here. Yeah, there it is. Oh my. That's awesome. It's a trickle. Take a while to fill these, but this is coming from way down below. Amazing, amazing. Okay. It works. It worked. So that trickling sound is the sweet sound of water being pumped uphill passively by a ram pump. Obviously it's a low flow. It'll take a while to fill even one of these. And once it's filled one of them, we'll know what the fill rate is. I'm pretty pleased. This is great. You can see the ram pump way down there, just clicking away. It's actually even not that noisy. It's away from our guest rental and our house, so we'll see what it's like at night, but it's actually pretty quiet. And then we'll have gravity water for the garden, which is amazing, and a nice little reservoir for when it gets drier. So I've got some more work to do downstream, but this is a big milestone. I'm pretty pleased that we're now filling these tanks. Physics. It's the day after I got the ram pump going. The ram pump is faithfully clicking away, continuing to pump. It's now been about 20 hours since it got going. And so I'm coming up here to our 4,000 liter 4-tote water tower. And you can hear it continues to fill drip by drip. Let's see where we're at now. So this is one single tote of the 4 totes. Like I said, 20 hours. Within about 4 hours, we are at about 50 liters. And this mark here is 300, 400. Yeah, it's a little diagonal here, but we're, I'd say about 450. We're getting close to 500 liters. So basically half of the tote in about a day. Probably we'll get the halfway mark at about, I don't know, around 24 hours. So in about a day, half a tote. Which is actually pretty good. Really happy with that. And at least in this tote, which I haven't opened up yet to the full system, it is solid. The base is solid. There's some weight coming down now. Yeah. So far, so good. I just came from uphill. I checked the water tower totes. We're at about 3,200 liters out of almost 4,000. So we're getting close to having that full. I've still got a couple fittings to hook on downstream. We got the drip tape in the garden. And yeah, just a couple other connections there, and then we'll test it out and troubleshoot, see if there's any leaks. The ram pump has been cycling pretty consistently. The latest cycle has been going about 2 days, which is great. All right, so here we are at the tanks. You can see here on one of the lower tanks, got 2 low tanks. They're both topped up. We've got probably about 3,900 liters, 3,800 liters maybe. So pretty much the capacity, well, the capacity at least at this configuration for these 4 totes, it's full. The ram pump has been working. It has stopped a few times, but when it gets going, it goes for a couple days. But then something, probably with the siphon, either keeps the waste valve down or up. So I'm still troubleshooting that piece, but in the meantime, it has been filling up these totes. It's overflowing. I need to figure out an overflow piece now that I know which of the totes is lowest. But this is great. Yeah, nearly 4,000 liters of water uphill. Downstream from here, I've just finished all of the connections. Probably not today, but tomorrow I'm going to do basically fitting by fitting. I'm going to go through and troubleshoot. I'm sure there's going to be a couple leaks, surprises, but this is fantastic. Hey everyone, Steve here at the homestead. I'm in the back I'm right by the ram pump, which I put in the spring. So that was a good project to do in the spring, of course, before wildfire season. The mechanics on that basically is that we have the spring kind of way up in the back. Can't see it through the bush right now. Put it that way, uphill, maybe 3 meters elevation. Put a check valve that brings the water down. It forks here. There's a standpipe that goes up that tree. And so that basically pulls the head of the spring. That runs into this rigid pipe here that comes into the ram pump. And we've really not had to keep it running regularly because we also have a bypass here, which has been open, that just brings the water from the spring right into the garden. And so the drip lines that we installed there this spring, they need, of course, some pressure, but not a whole lot. And that distance, the 3 meters here or 2 meters here, plus another 3 meters down to the garden, is actually quite satisfactory for the garden. So we've mostly had the bypass opened, but uphill from here, you can kind of see the line running up here. Up another 8-10 meters are 4 IBC totes, each 1,000 liters. So we've got 4,000 liters that have been parked up there since spring that were passively pumped up by the ram pump and have been basically a reserve. So that was primarily built as extra gravity pressure for a drip line system in the garden, and it is hooked up that way. We haven't primarily used it that way. We've been using the bypass and then just using this as a reserve uphill for anything that we need. You know, if we needed extra water during the drier spells during the summer, we needed extra pressure in the garden on those lines or on hoses, or for fire protection as well, to run sprinklers kind of passively in the background. So that was a really good project to have in place, and it's worked out really nicely. An extra source of water to the garden, an extra backup source to the barn loft, and to have the reserve uphill with gravity pressure. All of those pieces have worked well. The fittings have held. The ram pump has performed really well. It was able to pull water that was replenishing in the spring anyway, so it wasn't actually drawing down any water sources. Even with the open valve on the drip lines, the spring has been pretty healthy throughout the heat of the summer. So all good.